Hello and welcome to the BBC Good Food Podcast with Tom Kerridge. I'm Orlando and we're here today to talk about exciting ingredients, cooking techniques and general kitchen chat. Plus, we have an original Tom Kerridge recipe for you to try out at home, whether you're a beginner or a budding chef. Welcome back to the BBC Good Food Podcast with Tom Kerridge, Rosie Burkitt and me, Orlando Murrin. Today we're going to be talking about British cheeses. Tom, if I can start with you, what do you use for cheese on toast? Assuming, of course, that you like cheese on toast as much as everyone else in the whole world does.
Who doesn't like cheese on toast? I mean, that has to be the daftest question ever. I mean, cheese on toast is the greatest thing. I mean, to be honest, the stronger, the more mature, the most amazing cheddar you can get. I absolutely love it. I mean, if you're going to go like real posh, you grate cheddar and then you grate in a gooey cheese as well to the mix and put it on. And I can go all out right, but normally it would be a piece of toast with some sliced cheddar on, stick it under the grill. But you've got to cook it. See, I don't do it on a real high heat. I'll drop the grill to a lower one underneath it and slowly melt the cheese so the toast doesn't burn, so the cheese has plenty of time to caramelize and get those lovely crispy when it goes from a nice darker orange all around the outside. And that's what I look for. So slow cooking cheese for cheese on toast is amazing with a little bit of Worcester sauce and strong cheddar.
Do you toast one side of the bread first or both sides?
Both sides, so it's crispy. So both sides of bread, so it's crispy. Rosie's in agreement?
I'm in agreement with almost everything you've said apart from the toasting of both sides.
No, mate, you have a soggy bit.
This is just my childhood, and it was probably the first thing that I learnt to cook, that I cooked for myself and my sister, and I remember always toasting one side, and the bread was, quite sort of below average white sliced bread.
Yeah.
Toast one side under the grill, then turn it over, take it out from under the grill, cover it in cheddar, Worcester sauce under the grill, and then until caramelizing.
So you put the cheese on the uncooked side?
Yeah. And
What?
I think it's so that it sort of seeps in slightly.
Yeah,
and
I get it.
Yeah.
I think that's a bit gummy, I have to say. I like the double toasting myself. And then you put the Worcester sauce on before you grill it, do you?
I think we did, yeah. We used to put the Worcester sauce on and then maybe a bit more, definitely before you grill it, so that it seeps into the cheese and it creates these kind of little brown bubbling marks.
Yeah, Worcester sauce goes on before you grill, so it cooks into the cheese, that's definite. And then afterwards, cracked black pepper. So it's big, punchy, spicy flavours, strong cheddar, Worcester sauce, cracked black pepper. That's what you want.
And just to check again, you slice the cheddar or you grate it? You mentioned the grating word.
Well, you could go super posh and you could grate it and do a mix of cheeses if you wanted to. But like standard, I would slice the cheddar.
Yeah, because if you grate it, if you've got really fine cheddar with those little kind of crunchy morsels of saltiness in it, the grating kind of disturbs that texture a bit, doesn't it?
I'd only grate it if you were mixing up the cheeses, so you could mix the two cheeses together and then put it on. So you get that kind of like lovely salty big kick from a lovely cheddar and something a bit gooey and unctuous. Something, I don't know, maybe like a good Gruyere or something like that melts really nicely. Those two together will work really lovely.
We're all getting rather hungry and we will be eating in a moment, and we've got a wonderful recipe coming up which is actually based on cheese on toast. So that's something to look forward to, and we've got like wonderful aromas floating around the studio while we're here. But we have mentioned cheddar, and is cheddar really the English cheese, the great British cheese?
Oh, it is for me. I mean, I'm from the West Country, not far from Cheddar Gorge, where it is amazing. I remember going there on school trips and things. It's fantastic for me. It's kind of the ultimate. I think if you think of a cheese that should be exported, and cheddar-style cheeses that the world recognizes, it's the one thing that we do really well that's different to pretty much every other cheese in the rest of the world. Like, Italian cheeses are fantastic, French cheeses are amazing. There's so many great cheese makers out there around the world, but a British cheddar is something that's hugely recognized in that style of something that we do. I think it's amazing.
Yes, it seems to come in different types. I'm in Devon, and there's a rather grassy one, which is absolutely marvellous. And then in Somerset, there's a much drier, chewier one, the Montgomery one, which is really famous. And these are all masters of their art, but they're quite different in character.
Yeah, it's aging process, how they're aged, what they've done, the milk, the style of the milk. It's seasonal as well. So many people don't or think that cheese is seasonal, but it's huge because obviously it depends on the milk that comes from the dairy cattle, what the times of the year that they're out and when they're able to eat grass and when they're not and what's going. So it really does vary throughout the year. So, but yeah, cheddars for me are absolutely stunning. Like you say, the Montgomery one you mentioned there, I mean, that's what a powerful big kick that cheese has got. It's fantastic.
And the Keen's cheddar as well is really, really good. And I think there's such a distinction to be drawn as well between really fantastic farmhouse artisan produced cheeses and obviously the mass-produced industrialized cheeses that are made with big homogenous amounts of milk from all kinds of different cows and pasteurized and taken all of the character out of it. Whereas, we're talking about cheeses that, as you say, are expressive of where they're from, the season, the climate, the weather, what the cows have been grazing on. And that is the amazing thing about cheese. And it's why it's kind of one of the real agricultural products that we should be so proud of in this country, because it is so regional and there are so many different ones being made. But obviously that heritage of farmhouse cheeses has been in decline, since the Second World War and since the industrialization of food. And it's something that we all should be supporting and celebrating.
Yeah, you can see why they manufacture enormous, house-sized blocks of cheddar, because people want, a bit of cheddar and they're not that worried about it. But it's the artisan things because they've got the same name as cheddar and anyone can call anything cheddar. I could go out of this room and say that I'm cheddar, couldn't I? And it wouldn't be illegal. Whereas...
You could definitely...
It wouldn't be illegal, but it'd be a bit odd.
You could identify as cheddar if you like.
But what I'm getting at here is that it's not a protected name, the way that Stilton have slapped a protection on their name and of course in France, where all the names of the cheeses are protected with barbed wire and radiation.
But cheddar has become a style rather than recognising the area, whereas that's why I think, so you can get cheddar style cheeses from all over. I mean, like Rosie mentioned, Keen's, that's from up, that's up in Lancashire way, that's right.
Somerset.
All right. Well, what's the one in Lancashire?
Well, that's the Lancashire cheese. Is that the Graham Kirkham one?
Yes.
Yeah. So that is called a Lancashire cheese, and it is the last remaining Lancashire cheese in the world.
The last remaining Lancashire
made with raw milk.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So not pasteurized.
No. Yeah. And that
bigger flavors.
Yeah, huge flavors. And it's quite scary that it is the last one in the world, and that's why it's become so well known. And they're sort of dying out, a lot of these cheeses.
We have a lot to thank Neal's Yard for.
Absolutely.
Because they have been for 20 years championing the British cheese industry and really going out there, finding cheeses and encouraging cheesemakers and then bringing them to Neal's Yard, where you great restaurateurs, Tom, I imagine you find out what's going on at Neal's Yard to find out what the best cheeses are being made.
I mean, Neal's Yard, they've been a source of cheese knowledge, a fountain of cheese knowledge for like you say, over 20 years now, and they really do champion British products, British cheeses, small scale producers and suppliers, and like Rosie says, it is very sad that we move away from it. Although it's pretty much like everything that's in the food market. If you think those special things were always seen as special treats. Cheese was always seen as a cheat, but now it's become so everybody just expects cheese. Cheese in sandwich, cheese and lamb sandwich from the supermarket for a quick lunch. It's not seen as special anymore.
No.
It's the same as, I don't know, chicken, or it's the same as, like I remember as a kid having roast chicken, and that was something special. Now chicken is just something that that whole production of stuff has got. But at the same point, what it does do, I think, is showcase how good small-scale producers are, how good that cheese is, when you really do get to taste the difference between cheese that you're used to buying a sandwich from the supermarket for a quick lunch and then having something that's so special when you come across it. It blows your mind. You go, oh, this cheese is like unbelievable, unbelievably good. So in some ways, it's poor that we don't recognise it as being something so special anymore. But when you do come across them, you recognise how special they are.
Absolutely. And I think it's about, as you say, seeing it as a treat and essentially remembering that it is an agricultural product and it's an animal product. So there's a huge story behind every single cheese. And we probably have got away from that idea through buying packets of industrially produced cheddar in the supermarket, but really we should be thinking, well, where's this coming from? How's it made? What's the story? And actually there's a huge amount of time that's gone into rearing the animals, milking them, looking after them, feeding them, and producing the cheese. And there's usually a very interesting story attached to the cheesemaker as well, and finding out about those things.
They're fascinating guys, the cheesemakers. When you get them together, they love a party. I went to a cheesemaker's party and it went on all night. I left them to it, frankly. Yeah. They're very, very jolly.
But I think that's like anybody who's involved in food on that kind of artisan and small scale, that people are, I mean, they're so passionate about what they do, and it's the same as people who brew beer or wines, or create bakers, or people because their world is about this one product that it makes it so it's such an exciting little world to be in. And then us on the other side of it that try to meet all of the guys from all areas of those industries, it creates this wonderful eclectic mix of incredible producers.
Maybe they're cooped up with their cheeses 364 days a year, and then the day that they're let out, they go insane with all their fellow cheesemakers.
Was there lots of wine involved?
There was lots and lots of wine, and beer and cider, of course.
Yeah, well, it goes so well with it. It goes so everyone just expects you think of cheese and wine, but actually there's the flavor layers that you can get through cheese are so complicated that they can mix with so much.
We tried everything with everything. This was at Cadbury Court, which is where the Montgomery cheddar's made, and we had 8 or 9 cheeses, each served with a different beer, cider, or wine, and it was unimaginably exciting experience, and so different. Every cheese has so much character.
It all?
I took very careful notes, Tom. But when you look around our countryside, if you couldn't have an aerial view of Britain, it screams out, this is where beautiful cheese should be made. That lush farmland, every possible variety of different sort of farmland, soil, rainfall. It's what we ought to be doing. But we seem to have the real thing about British cheeses, as I say, is the hard cheeses and, of course, the Stilton. And we've never gone in for the huge range of soft cheeses that the French have. And is that a shame? Do you think that's something that we should have done? Maybe copy the continental cheeses to...
There are some. Yeah,
there are some imitations, aren't there? Like British Somerset Brie, for instance.
And there's Baron Bigot, which is made in Suffolk, I think, which is a brie style.
Amazing.
And it's so creamy and delicious.
Is that another soft cheese like brie or camembert?
Yes, it's a brie style cheese.
And then we can't forget Stinking Bishop either. I know it's slightly changed a bit. It's become pasteurised. But when I first came across it, it was an unpasteurised cheese that was just, I mean, it was phenomenal. A washed rind, soft, gooey kind of cheese. It's similar-ish to a Poisse, but not quite as, I mean, what a cheese that is. Absolutely amazing.
Incredible cheese. It's called Stinking Bishop because that's the name of the variety of pear that made the perry that the rind was washed in.
Yeah.
Clever.
It does stink and all, though. Yeah. I mean, let's be honest.
Now, we had a question in from Instagram of how are you meant to store these stinking cheeses? Because I know that they're banned on French public transport, some of the cheeses.
Really?
They are indeed. You're not allowed to take, well, I don't know whether you'd be arrested or not, but
how are you supposed to get them around?
Probably eat them on the spot, eat them at the market, I don't know. But they do permeate, shall we say, the fridge, don't they? Yeah. Any solutions for that, or just enjoy it and get on with it?
I mean, I would keep them in. I would keep them in another, like a plastic sealed.
I thought you were going to say another fridge.
In another fridge. Yeah, well, yeah. Ideally, have a second fridge at home just for cheese.
Do you have a cheese fridge?
And not at home, but at work we do. Yeah. So actually, in the restaurants we do have a cheese fridge because one, because we got so much of it, but two, because it's like the smell does permeate into everything else. But if you keep it in a Tupperware box with a lid that seals it, it's fine. But the trick is to actually not have it in there that long. Eat it.
Yeah, get it eaten.
There's also a British Parmesan, I think, made in Sussex called Twynham Grange, which is for people who, for whatever reason, don't want to eat real Parmesan. It's meant to be a completely acceptable substitute. But that's a different thing, copying foreign cheeses, isn't it? And we really have enough to celebrate in the ones that we've always made.
Yeah, but I get it because, you know, when you look around at the cheeses of France in particular, I mean, they're phenomenal. They've been cheese making for, you know, and making some of the world's best for years upon years upon years of brilliant blues, brilliant softs, fantastic washed rind, incredible goats. You know, they do make amazing cheeses, again, because France is such a huge farmland with amazing agriculture and incredible pastures and fantastic weather systems that change and then, you know, it moves up into the Alps and you get things like Vacherin when that comes around. I know that's not French, but you know, the idea of the whole, it's so varied. So there's so many cheeses in France which are great, and because they're so good, there's nothing wrong with having a look at what they do and then using our milk that comes from a similar sort of areas and going, well, why can't I have a go at making the best brie or the best washed rind or the best.
On that, there is an Italian man who has actually come to the UK specifically for that reason, because he couldn't get a high enough quality of milk in Italy, which is really surprising because I think when we look at Italy, we always think they're so superior to us in terms of food and drink on every level. But he came over. His name's Claudio De Luca, and he's making burrata in the UK, and he's making it at Helen Browning's farm in Wiltshire, and she's the CEO of the Soil Association. And the reason he came to the UK was because he wanted this really beautiful organic milk from cows that have fed on a fantastic biodiverse pasture. And the fact that he came to the UK to use the milk here to make the burrata is saying quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing. We're very lucky on these shores. It's such a small little island, but with incredible produce. And, you know, our cheese does rate up there in as some of the best in the world.
Incidentally, I saw a video of someone making vegan mozzarella. Mm-hmm. You heard of this vegan mozzarella? I didn't know. I couldn't work out what had gone into it.
Was that School Night Vegan? Because he's been making it on Instagram. He's amazing.
What does he make it from? Rubber? Does he melt down plastic or something? It's hard to think how you could make mozzarella without starting off with milk. But
yeah, I mean, there are nut milks, though, aren't there? So whether there's some kind of way of...
Oh, that stuff, chickpea water, that magic stuff.
Aquafaba.
That's so funny, the things you can do with chickpea water. We do digress from British cheeses, don't we? But, I mean, that is mad stuff. I wondered if, you know, people make mayonnaise from it and meringues and things. I wondered if it's actually, you could do the same with just water, your actual water. You don't need the chickpea water at all, or whether there really is something in the chickpea.
It's the protein that leaches out of the chickpeas
so it can't be much,
that emulsifies in a similar way to egg white.
Right.
So
Thank you, Rosie, our scientific and technical consultant there.
Never been called that before, but I'll take it, definitely.
So, Tom, in the restaurant, are British cheeses popular on your cheese board? Do you do a cheese board that's specifically British, or how do you handle it?
No, we do. We work very hard. At the Hand of Flowers, we probably have about 5 or 6 cheeses, and that's it on the cheese board. And then we have a hard, we have a soft, we have a goats, we have a blue, and then we have a special, a seasonal special of what it is. But sometimes that seasonal special will change to, it might be, like I mentioned earlier, a Vacherin. When that is in season, that is incredible, and it's not British, and you go, right, okay, you know, it's fine. But the other ones, we work really hard to try and find great British cheeses of a hard, soft, blue, and a goats, and you just try and make sure that, and again, that alters throughout the year because of the way that the seasons work. But yeah, we always look for British first. At Kerridge's in the centre of London, our cheese board, our cheese selection is a little bigger because it's kind of presented in the room, and it's a great big space. So we do take cheeses from around the world, but I'd say we're 80% British in Kerridge's as well. So we're always looking for showcasing the best British produce that there is.
Good man. Now, I wondered where you both were on flavoured cheeses, because I know these are quite controversial, and we asked social media what they thought, and there was a lot of humming and hawing. Some people were ill on the spot. Other people said, oh, go on, what's wrong with it? Because you eat a bit of cheese with something anyway, so if it's been done for you...
No, I think it's wrong.
I got to be honest, I can't think of a single unprocessed flavoured cheese that's like... If you're singing about it as a brilliant product, you're looking at artisan cheesemakers who love, from the word go, the farm, the cattle, the way that it's been looked after, from the milk to the produce, the way that it is produced. Everything about it is about that raw milk produce being turned into cheese. The moment that you then start flavouring it with garlic or red peppers or whatever, it becomes a secondary product. However, I do get why some people like them, and if it's an introduction into people having it something on their cheese board at home at Christmas or something that gets people who don't normally like cheese into eating it, I get it. I get it, but it's not something that I would eat. I have to be honest. And if it was the only cheese there, then I might. But I got to be honest, it's not something. I'm all about the person that's made it and where the milk product comes from, and rather than it actually being something that's got a load of fake smoked flavour into it or something that's a bit odd.
Saying that, I'm with you, and I find those Wensleydales with like mango and ginger and strawberry and cranberry, whatever they put in, quite disgusting. And I wasn't really into smoked cheese either. And then I was judging the dairy category for the Soil Association's Boom Awards recently, and I tried a smoked cheddar, and it was unbelievably good.
Yeah, but is that something that's had smoke flavour added to it, or is that the cheddar that's then been cold smoked
actually
after?
Oak smoked.
Yeah, see, now that's different.
And
that's
that was
amazing.
delicious.
Yeah. So you've made a great cheese and then you've stuck it in a cold smoker.
Yeah.
I get that. You're adding a different thing to it. I'm 100% behind that. Love that.
Yeah.
And you can also wrap things in things to give them a bit of flavour. That's legitimate, isn't it? Like the French use grape skins, I think. And I think yarg is wrapped in nettles, isn't it? Nettles, isn't it?
Nettles.
Which doesn't give it an obvious flavour, but it's got some kind of grassy quality to it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All of those sort of flavour, enhancement flavours from nature, I get, and I love that. I think that's great. But
And wild garlic sometimes
yes,
is used to wrap, which is nice.
So we're all right on the outside, but we're a bit worried about little blobs of Christmas pudding floating about in the middle of the cheese and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't mind a bit of truffle though, in like a brie style.
I
with a layer of
judged
truffle.
a cheese competition once, and I was given a couple of categories to be judged, and one of them was flavoured cheddar, and everyone pointed and laughed, and because we were the novice judges, we got this dreadful category to judge, and it did have bits of like fruit cocktail flavoured cheese and alien flavours. Marmite, of course. Some people like Marmite cheese. Now, I'm getting nods from Rosie.
Well, I'm not.
You see, when we get down to it, people are a bit more biddable about this.
I think Marmite and cheese is such an incredible combination, and for me it's childhood sandwiches. So almost every day I'd have a cheese and Marmite, or just pure Marmite and butter sandwich. And there is a chef called Robert Taylor who has the Compasses in Crondale in Kent. I know you're a fan of his cooking, Tom. He's amazing. He's a really incredible chef. And I went for a meal at his restaurant recently, and he had a bread selection of freshly baked bread that he'd made, and the butters came out. And one of the things on the plate with the butters was a mascarpone, so a cream cheese that had been blended with Marmite, just very, very subtly, and it was so delicious. So he'd actually mixed the Marmite into the mascarpone and made a kind of Marmite-flavoured soft cheese, and it was unbelievably good with the bread.
How clever.
Just a hint of Marmite.
You know we're meant to love or hate Marmite. Could I declare myself at this point as someone who's kind of, it's fine, but... You know, I'm in the middle. How are you on, Tom, on Marmite?
I'm like you. I'm all right with it. It's quite nice. It wouldn't be my first choice for spreading on top of a piece of toast.
Yeah.
But if I went round someone's house late at night and that was the only snack and they had it, I'd go, delicious, thank you very much, I'll have it. However, I would probably turn down a packet of Twiglets. That's the thing. I'm not all over them. Like, I've got to be honest, with that kind of extra Marmite-y flavour, I'm not. So. Yeah, so I'm in the middle like you. I'm like, yeah, I'll go with that.
I mean, it's useful. It can be useful. I have it in my kitchen. I use it to, if you're glazing the top of a pie or a tart, savoury, obviously, and in the egg you mix a little bit of Marmite.
It's a very good seasoning.
Gives a really nice colour and flavour.
That's how I use it. I wouldn't say that I love it spread thickly on toast or anything like that. Any kind of thick amount of Marmite is actually quite disgusting, but a hot buttered piece of toast with just a smear, a real lick of Marmite just sinking into the butter is really, really delicious.
We've detonated
we have digressed.
Their advertising campaign. We've wrecked, though, about love it or hate it, haven't we? Because we all quite like it, but
quite like it.
not that bothered.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's quite nice.
Marmite, yeah, it's all right.
Now, while we're on strong
quite nice, actually.
While we're on strong flavours, can we talk about Stilton?
Yes.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, right. Great.
I'm a fan of Stilton. I think I prefer I prefer a creamier blue cheese, just texturally wise. But flavour wise, of Stilton, I think is fantastic.
Is it a bit crumbly?
Yeah, it's a bit crumbly.
Right.
Like it wouldn't be my first choice of having a slice of it. I love it. But I go, if there's one blue cheese out there, I go, I know, something a bit softer, like a good Cashel Bleu or
Have you
something
had
like that.
Stilton?
No, what on earth is
Stilton,
that?
you have to have this. It's an incredible cheese. Again, I know we were talking about Neal's Yard and what they've been doing for British cheese, but it is one of the cheeses that they kind of had a hand in developing. It's made by a cheesemaker called Joe Schneider in Nottinghamshire, and it's a Stilton-style cheese made with raw milk, and it's incredibly creamy, really complex. It's got all the
There you go. Sold. I'll have
notes
it.
of Stilton.
I'll have that without even trying it. Yes, please.
It's really, really delicious. You need that on your cheese board.
Yeah. I need it now.
I should have
I'm not just giving it to customers. I'll have it at home. Thanks, mate.
And do you cook with blue cheese a lot?
Yeah,
Tom?
I like blue cheese a lot. Yeah, we use it. We use it for lots of different things. The blue cheese, it's one of those things that has a defining characteristic. But then on top of that, there's underlying there's a saltiness that comes with it. It's great for seasoning. It's great for power. It's great for flavour. And you look at, you can go through to Roquefort. I mean, if you look at Roquefort, I mean, that's one of the strongest cheeses around. Where it's almost got like this kind of film of like salty, greasy, big punchy flavour that comes with it. The moment that you blend that with something or add that into something, those big dark flavours, it doesn't become about cheese anymore. It becomes about a counterbalance of strength, acidity, salt. I use blue cheese a lot in terms of a cooking as a balance in flavours. Yeah,
It really adds impact, doesn't it?
huge. Yeah, but not just for the sake of going, it's a blue cheese. It's actually what the dimensions of what those flavours bring. That's what I always look at with cheeses like that.
I think it's got a sweetness to it as well.
Can have.
Yeah, fruitiness
Yeah,
sometimes.
I made something with cheese last week, and it was a recipe actually, a printed recipe, and it had a tablespoon of vinegar in it as well. And when I tasted it, I said, "This tastes like blue cheese," but it wasn't blue cheese, and it was the vinegar that was giving a blue cheese kind of atmos to the dish, which was a bit of a surprise and I think it must be the sweetness and maybe the aroma. I don't know why that happened.
But again,
The acidity.
It's acidity. It's big,
Yeah.
punchy flavours that the blue cheese gives away. That gives, it's huge. It's normally that and goes. When you go to posh restaurants, not like mine, obviously, but you go there where you get that cheese board and then you're given when you have it on your plate and you have your little slices and the waiter tells you to go one way around the plate because it starts off with a milder one and you don't want to end up with the strongest one first because then you won't be able to taste the ones at the back.
Yeah.
So you go blue cheese is normally the last one that you eat because it is the one with the biggest punch, the biggest flavour. That if you start with that, you won't be able to taste anything else.
Yeah.
And it's quite hard to find something to drink with it. I mean, traditionally they serve port with Stilton, don't they? Because it needs something uber powerful to kind of handle those flavours, doesn't it?
Yeah, the other good thing that a lot of places look at, ourselves included, sherries are very good with it because where they're oak aged, that oak aging process, the flavours that sherries take on, I don't mean like the cheapy sherries, I mean like really nice, lovely ones that have been aged for a long time. They go so well
They're
with
so
cheese.
woody, aren't they?
Exactly,
They're
and
really
they
woody.
work
Yeah.
really well with it. And ciders, like Rosie was talking earlier, like ciders and beers as well can go with it. I mean, it is so complex, cheeses. There's a lot of things to drink with it. Not lilt, though. Lilt's not good with cheese.
What about Tizer?
Tizer, yeah, I don't know, maybe not.
Still to come on BBC Good Foods podcast with Tom Kerridge.
Exactly that. So
yeah.
a great big doorstep wedge of toast is replaced by a lovely roasted bit of cauliflower that works so well.
Now, some people eat their cauliflower quite raw, I find, but I must be old-fashioned because I quite like it well cooked. So
Well, you might be in trouble here then because
Well-
it's a bit chunky.
Now, one of the amazing things about cheese is like chocolate, that it's got this thing that happens when you melt it. I mean, in chocolate, it melts in your mouth when you eat it, but with cheese, it melts into dishes, which gives you all sorts of thrilling possibilities in the kitchen of doing things with it. Are there any favourite things that you like to cook with cheese apart from things we've already mentioned?
I mean, cheese is amazing in any kind of tart or quiche. And
Kind of holds the whole thing together, really, doesn't it? It wouldn't
Yeah.
be a tart or quiche without the cheese, really, would it?
it's a great way of using up any odds and sods of cheese that you might have in your fridge as well. If you've got, something that maybe wouldn't be so nice to actually eat because maybe it's going a bit hard or whatever, melting it into a tart with some veg is really good.
Yeah. And soufflés. How are we on soufflés?
Twice baked cheese souffle is one of the first things I learned to make. I mean, it was one of the dishes that, as a chef that started in the kitchen in, around about 1990, 91, like twice baked cheese soufflés. I mean, come from based on the Gavroche recipes that you just go, right, this is amazing. It's beautiful. You bake them once, they kind of collapse, and then you put them through the oven again for service, and they puff up and they're delicious. And they're just big, strong, cheesy flavors, but they're fantastic. I love a cheese souffle.
They sound to the novice, twice baked soufflés, like that's going to be not just got to make a souffle, then I've got to twice do the whole thing. But really, it's rather practical. Just to explain how it happens, because it is ultra reliable, isn't it?
Well, I mean, essentially, you're making a thick white sauce with cheese in. Like, that's the base. So, you make your white sauce, with your flour and your butter and your milk, and you bring it up to the boil and you cook it out like you're making a standard one. And then you throw in all your cheese that you're going to make, and then you cook it out for a bit until it's really thick. You leave it to go cold. And then out of that sauce, you then whisk up your egg whites and you mix the two together, put them into your buttered and breadcrumb souffle mold, and you bake them in a bain-marie so they puff up to a nice souffle. And you've got to cook them enough so that they actually cook all the way through.
So that they're set, set. Yeah. Take
them out the oven and leave them to cool. And it is actually really quite easy. You leave them to cool, turn them out of the souffle
and
molds.
They go down, don't they?
They collapse.
So don't be alarmed. Don't be alarmed, anyone.
You're waiting them for it to look like a punctured football. That's exactly what you want, right? They collapse. And then you turn them out. And when they're cold, that's fine. You keep them in the fridge like that. Then you put them onto a baking tray lined with baking parchment. No ramekin, no nothing. Just the collapsed punctured football.
Upside down. Upside
down is the best way. And then you put them back into a high temperature oven, about 220, and you bake them for about 5 to 8 minutes. And they rise up again. They're not perfect shape. But what they do is they puff up again a little bit, and then they start to brown and they crisp up, and you've got this amazing, brilliant souffle that's dead easy to do. Serve it on the table. It's fantastic.
And they're much better than an actual souffle, I think, because an actual souffle tends to be caustically hot in the middle. By the time you get your fork into it, you can't really touch it for a few seconds, whereas this doesn't seem to be so damagingly hot.
No, and it's such a delicious
nice
dish to do. It's a savoury souffle, and it tastes great. It's a real good starter. Or you could do one big one and serve it as a main course.
Oh, I've never done that.
My mum's really into twice baked cheese souffle. She does them quite often for her lunches for her friends, and it's great because you're taking the jeopardy out of the whole rising and being perfect
I like
thing.
The jeopardy free lunch party.
Yeah, and you can make them ahead. So you make them ahead and then you just heat it up in the oven like you say.
Yeah.
Do you know, we better have something to eat. Because we have this great recipe on Good Food, this great Tom recipe for cauliflower rarebits. And this is the best of many worlds coming together here, because it's a cauliflower steak, you'd call it, I think, wouldn't it?
Yeah, cauliflower has become quite... where people are looking for meat-free Mondays and vegetarian dishes and vegetables being about one, the big thing that everybody kind of is looking for, how to make more of vegetables and let them sing for themselves. Cauliflower has come through as one of those great things. It's a luscious flavour. It works so well with cheese, like everybody knows. So it's like a big chunk of cauliflower that you cut through the middle and you roast, and then you make a rarebit, but you make a rarebit mix. And this is dead easy to make. Very similar to making the souffle base. You kind of cook out flour and butter and a bit of milk, and then you melt the cheese into it, add in a couple of egg yolks, and you take it off the heat and leave it to cool. And then you can kind of like shape it and roll it. And it's kind of shaped and goes on top of the cauliflower and then baked.
So please dive in. Can you hear the jingling of actual knives and forks?
Here you go, Rosie.
It looks very good.
So we cut you a piece.
That would be fantastic. So the cauliflower is really taking the place of the toast in a way.
Exactly that. So a great big doorstep wedge of toast is replaced by a lovely roasted bit of cauliflower that works so well.
Now, some people eat their cauliflower quite raw, I find, but I must be old-fashioned because I quite like it well cooked. So
Well, you might be in trouble here then, because it's a bit chunky.
I think that what I would be inclined to do is actually simmer the cauliflower till it's tender. That's the solution. But
for cauliflower cheese.
Yeah. But Rosie, you're much younger than I am, so you probably like your vegetables very crunchy.
Thank you. Actually, thank you, Chef. Actually, I'm with you on cooking vegetables until they're tender. And I do a cauliflower cheese where I roast a whole cauliflower in the oven, a bit like what Tom's saying. Roast it until it's nice and tender, and then make a cheese sauce and pour that over, and then roast it again with that on. And then
it goes fully tender by roasting, does
Yeah.
it? Cauliflower, if you leave it in there long enough. How long does that take?
I don't know, 25, 30 minutes in a hot oven for the first roast, and then you pour the cheese sauce on and then bake it again.
I'm very relieved to hear that, because I remember the days when they were trying to discourage us from overcooking vegetables, and the vegetables were really, really crunchy, and they didn't taste of anything. You heard them when you ate them, but they didn't taste. There is a kind of, to use that current phrase, a sweet spot with a vegetable where it actually tastes of something and is still not overcooked. You must be aiming for that the whole time, are you, Tom? Or have you got...
Although it really depends on the dish. I have to be honest, vegetables are something like this where this is just perfect. So you got the crunch from the core in the middle and the softer bit on the outside. But when you look at building dishes as complete things, you're also looking for texture. So sometimes crunchy vegetables, undercooked vegetables are perfect for something because they highlight other things of dish. So it's a little bit more complex when I think you're looking at complete dish building, but most of the time for vegetables, if they're singing on their own, they got to be cooked all the way through. They've got to be cooked all the way through.
But I love like a crunchy pickled cauliflower with, say, a roasted cauliflower with maybe a shaved bit of cauliflower. Those sorts
cauliflower
of
3 ways.
different textures. Yeah,
rawness, pickled, softness, things that are just salted. So that I mean, when you just salt things, what that does is it softens them, but they still have a raw texture. It's quite a weird thing that goes on. So all of those kind of processes, there's a little bit more to it. But vegetables should be allowed to be what they are. However, I do think that all vegetables from now on should be served with cheese toppings.
That is so delicious.
It's perfect for me because it's kind of juicy, the cauliflower. So it's
sweet. So you've got the sweetness of the cauliflower with that lovely, salty, rich cheese sauce. That is so, so good.
You mentioned that triple cauliflower thing, Rosie. I think for the home cook, that approach is really quite difficult because you're expecting to make 3 different things for one plate.
But maybe you've made a jar of pickled cauliflower and you have that in the fridge, so you could, if you were doing, say, a roasted cauliflower dish or a boiled cauliflower dish, you could throw some of the stuff that you'd already pickled in there as well for a bit of different texture and flavour.
Yeah. Well, we're going to be talking about vegetables some other happy time, and maybe we can talk about pickling cauliflower. But thank you very much indeed. I hope you've enjoyed talking about British cheese. I've got lots of new ideas for it. And the first thing I'll be doing when I get home is assembling a British cheese board to celebrate all this lovely stuff.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to today's show. You'll find the recipe and thousands more on bbcgoodfood.com. If you have a minute, we'd love to hear from you on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram at BBC Good Food.